This is episode 42, and since it's Saturday, let's be honest, most people are analyzing brunch menus, not bond yields. But for those who still want clarity on yesterday's moves, here's the intel that matters. Today is Saturday, September 13th, 2025, and we're covering the intelligence brief for yesterday, Friday, September 12th, 2025. We're here to unpack the intelligence you've brought us, distilling those critical insights from, well, the noise of geopolitics, markets, and society.
Exactly. And looking at Friday, September 12th, the overall picture, it was quite a mix. You had escalations, definitely, but also diplomatic efforts trying to, smooth things over.
Right.
What we're seeing underneath, though, big picture, is this trend towards more militarization globally, societies getting more polarized, and countries becoming more protectionist with their economies. Our analysis points to, I'd say, a moderate but definitely rising systemic risk overall. It's a complex world you're navigating out there.
Okay, let's unpack this then. First major item, global markets, and specifically tech's resilience. So yesterday, the Nasdaq composite closed at an all-time high, 22,141.10 points, up, 0.45%?
That's right.
Which is pretty striking when, the S&P 500 dipped slightly, just 0.05%, and the Dow actually fell 0.59%. So what was behind this tech surge specifically?
The why behind that, based on high reliability reporting from Reuters, seems to be investors really anticipating that the U.S. Federal Reserve is going to cut rates.
Ah, the rate cut expectation.
Exactly. A 25 basis point cut, that's, a 0.25%. It signals maybe a slight easing. And you saw the big tech names like Microsoft, Tesla, really pushing that rally. It points to optimism around tech, maybe AI-driven growth.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, I think. That market optimism, especially in tech, it seems to clash with other signals, right?
How so?
Like the University of Michigan survey, consumer sentiment, down again for the second month running. So how do we square that? Markets up, consumers are feeling worse.
That's the critical question. Our correlational analysis, where we look at how these things move together, suggests maybe the market isn't fully reflecting some of those underlying sociopolitical risks we see elsewhere. But there was one interesting detail. Defense stocks. They actually rallied yesterday.
Oh, okay. So while the broader market was mixed, defense was up.
Right, which could signal, a potential shift, maybe some capital flowing there, anticipating that if geopolitical tensions keep rising, well, defense and maybe energy could be seen as a safer bet or a hedge.
Got it. So from those market ripples, let's shift to a pretty direct geopolitical event. NATO activating this new air defense mission, Eastern Sentry.
Yes, that was significant.
This was after Russian drones apparently entered Polish airspace. And Poland says they shot down 21 of them. That sounds like a major step up.
It absolutely is. And the official NATO releases, which are, high reliability A1 sources, they confirm Eastern Sentry mobilized quite the force. We're talking F-16s, Rafales, Eurofighters.
Top-tier jets.
Advanced fighter jets, yeah. Plus AWACS, those are the airborne command posts, the eyes in the sky, and Patriot missile batteries, other ground-based systems too.
So comprehensive shield.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And importantly, this wasn't just Poland. You had Denmark, France, Germany, the UK contributing. It shows enhanced integration on that eastern flank. Real solidarity. It's a collective message.
Okay, so the implications. Does this kind of robust response deter future incidents? Or is there a risk here? Could Russia see this as, a threat and escalate things further? It feels like a fine line.
That's exactly the dilemma with deterrence, isn't it? You aim to make the cost too high, but there's always that chance of miscalculation. And the public statements, they reflected that resolve.
Like what?
Well, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, he posted on social media about bolstering our posture and making it clear that NATO is always ready to defend. Pretty direct.
And
French President Macron was similarly firm. He said, "We will not yield to Russia's growing intimidation." We saw this reported by Al Jazeera, other credible B2, B3 sources. So the message is unity and strength, trying to deter. But how Moscow reads it, that's the key variable.
We've covered a lot already. Markets, NATO's moves. Let's pause just for a moment, then we'll get into the diplomatic track and some urgent humanitarian situations. Before we continue, here's a quick note. This deep dive is powered by NextSight, a global investigations and intelligence leader. Their open-source OSINT platform, Site Connect, fuels these reports and lets you tailor them to your needs. From complex cross-border investigations to high-stakes corporate intelligence, their work consistently operates on another level, fast, precise, and fully corroborated. Learn more at www.next-site.com.
Okay, let's pick up with item number 3, a really significant diplomatic development, this one concerning the Middle East. The UN General Assembly adopted something called the New York Declaration.
Yes, and the vote was overwhelming. 142 in favor, only 10 against, 12 abstentions. That's a strong majority.
It really is. What's the core of this declaration? What's it calling for?
Essentially, according to the official UN press release, and Reuters reporting both high-reliability sources, it's calling for tangible, time-bound, and irreversible steps towards a two-state solution.
Okay, so concrete action.
Right. And it does condemn attacks by both sides, explicitly Hamas's October 7th attack, but also calls on Israel to end settlement expansion. It stresses needing a roadmap, towards Palestinian statehood. It tries to be comprehensive.
Now, it's non-binding, right? UN General Assembly resolutions usually are, but that vote count, 142 nations, that has to send a powerful signal of international opinion.
Absolutely. It's a strong political signal, even without legal force. And you saw this reflected in sort of the people's hearsay sphere. For instance, the State of Palestine's UN mission shared a clip online, captioned something like, "The world chooses peace. Palestine chooses peace."
Ah, okay.
That reflects that optimistic take among supporters that this vote matters as a statement of global will. We saw that noted in places like the Times of Israel, B3 sources tracking reactions.
Okay, so that's the diplomatic track. But let's pivot to the stark reality on the ground. Yesterday, Israeli airstrikes reportedly hit Gaza City, at least 40 Palestinians killed, apparently even as residents refused evacuation orders. And there was that tragic UN report out, too, over 64,000 people killed in Gaza since October 2023, including, horribly, 142 children just from malnutrition. It's just devastating.
It is. And this highlights that brutal humanitarian toll as credible media like Reuters, B2 sources are reporting. Israel states its goal is targeting Hamas infrastructure. But for Palestinians on the ground, the immediate reality is immense loss and this constant fear of displacement, a truly dire situation.
And while that conflict continues, there were also efforts focused on Sudan. The Quad countries, that's the U.S., Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, they put out a joint statement, a roadmap for peace there.
Yes, they did. Their proposal, based on the official A1 joint statement, is quite structured. It calls for a 3-month humanitarian truce first.
Okay, pause the fighting.
Right. Followed by a 9-month transitional process, the aim. A civilian-led government in Sudan, trying to stabilize things, address the crisis.
Well, I sense a but coming.
Well, yes. Juxtaposed with that diplomatic push, we have some hard intelligence. Yale's Humanitarian Research Lab, this is primary A1 research, very reliable. They identified evidence, satellite imagery evidence of long-range drones
In Sudan.
near Nyala Airport in Darfur, which is controlled by the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. We're talking Shahed-type drones, potentially 1,500, maybe 2,000-kilometer range, and launch platforms, too.
Wow, that's game-changing, potentially, if the RSF has long-range strike capability.
It raises a really important question, doesn't it? How do these well-intentioned diplomatic roadmaps grapple with the reality of one side suddenly having, or apparently having, these advanced military capabilities?
Right, it definitely shifts the balance, makes a ceasefire perhaps harder to achieve or maintain.
Precisely. It suggests the RSF might have acquired these, possibly from foreign sources, giving them reach they didn't have before. It significantly complicates that path to peace the Quad is proposing.
Okay, let's shift focus again, still within Africa, but to other urgent humanitarian crises. A truly awful incident on the Congo River. A boat fire killed at least 107 people.
Yes, and 146 are still missing. Just horrific. The boat apparently drifted from Melange, caught fire, and even ignited homes along the riverbank.
Oh my goodness.
And this kind of tragedy, unfortunately, it's not uncommon in the DRC. Reuters reporting, B2 sources, consistently highlight this issue. Overloading, poor maintenance. It points to very fragile transport infrastructure. A recurring danger.
And happening at the same time, another crisis hitting the DRC, a new Ebola outbreak, this time in Kasai province.
That's correct. The WHO, the World Health Organization, again an official A1 source, reported 28 suspected cases, and crucially 15 deaths already.
That's a very high fatality rate.
It is. 54% case fatality ratio? That's extremely concerning.
Right.
And what's significant here is this is the first outbreak in Kasai since 2008. It's identified as a new spillover event, likely from animals.
And the resources to fight it.
That's another worry. The WHO report mentioned limited vaccine stock. And really concerningly, at least 3 healthcare workers are among the infected already. That puts immense strain on the response right from the start.
So if we connect the dots here, you've got this terrible boat disaster, a new Ebola outbreak, plus the ongoing conflict in Sudan we just talked about. How does all this impact the bigger picture for Africa?
Yeah.
Does it stretch aid resources too thin? Risk donor fatigue.
It's a major concern. Our correlational analysis highlights exactly that.
Yeah.
Multiple simultaneous crises like these put immense stress on national health systems, yes,
Yeah.
but also on international aid. There's a real risk of donor fatigue, where global attention and funding get fragmented. Humanitarian groups, governments, they might be forced into prioritizing, the most visible crisis, perhaps conflict displacement over disease response, even if both are critical. It becomes a tragic competition for limited resources.
As you listen, remember that NextSight's capabilities extend well beyond reporting. Their OSINT specialists and investigative teams connect dots across borders, validate sources, map relationships, and turn fragmented signals into actionable strategy, precisely the kind of work that helps us make sense of the complex world you're exploring. All right, moving on. Let's look at economic policy, specifically trade. Mexico seems to be making a significant move targeting electric vehicles.
Yes, the Secretary of Economy there proposed raising tariffs quite substantially, up to 50% on vehicles coming from countries Mexico doesn't have a free trade agreement with.
And the main target seems to be
Primarily Chinese EVs, yeah. According to Reuters analysis, a B2 source, the idea is to replace the existing 20% duties. The stated rationale is curbing the trade deficit, protecting Mexico's own manufacturing sector.
Although President Sheinbaum said it's not exclusively aimed at China.
She did make that clarification, but the practical impact, given the influx of lower-cost Chinese EVs, seems pretty clear. It's aimed at rebalancing things, supporting domestic production.
So what does this mean for the EV market globally, for companies involved, even for you potentially as a consumer? This feels like it could shake things up.
It definitely could reshape the market. It might hurt companies, Chinese ones like BYD, obviously, but maybe even Tesla. If they rely on certain supply chains affected by this, it could raise consumer prices for EVs in Mexico, certainly. And there's always the risk of retaliation, right? Other countries imposing tariffs in response.
And how does this fit into broader trends?
Well, what's interesting from our correlational analysis is that this policy really echoes these wider protectionist trends we're seeing, particularly across North America. But get this, Tesla's share price actually rose yesterday.
Huh. Despite potentially being impacted.
Right, which suggests maybe investors believe Tesla is adaptable enough, that they can navigate this perhaps by localizing more production, maybe shifting things around within Mexico or other free trade partner countries to avoid the highest tariffs. Confidence in their ability to adjust.
Okay, let's pivot to energy and climate policy. Seems like we're getting some mixed signals there too. Australia approved a massive LNG project, the North West Shelf, to run all the way to 2070.
Yes, a huge long-term commitment. Now, it comes with conditions, 48 of them, apparently, including a requirement to cut emissions by 60% by 2030. That's from the official ministerial statement, an A1 source.
But still, operating until 2070, that sounds significant in climate terms.
It is, and it creates this real juxtaposition. On one hand, Australia says this ensures gas supply security, especially for key buyers like Japan, and for the global market. On the other hand, critics are already calling it a carbon bomb. They estimate it could generate something like 4.3 billion tons of co-Euros emissions over its lifetime.
Wow. And how does that compare with what's happening elsewhere, like the EU?
Well, that's where the divergence becomes really stark. At the same time Australia is making this long-term fossil fuel commitment, the EU actually decided to postpone setting its 2040 greenhouse gas reduction target.
Postponed it. Why?
According to Euronews reporting, B2 sources, it's down to internal disagreements within the EU, concerns about the cost to industries, the economic impact. So you have this real split among major developed economies.
That is striking. One doubling down long-term on gas, another hesitating on future climate goals. What's the market reaction, the immediate takeaway?
Well, our analysis shows oil prices actually edged a bit higher yesterday. Brent crude hit around $88 a barrel. It seems traders are weighing these long-term fossil fuel commitments against these, well, sometimes delayed or uncertain climate targets.
So uncertainty fuels higher prices for now.
It seems that way. This tension between energy security now and climate goals later, it's definitely influencing the markets and likely will continue to impact things like carbon credit prices going forward.
Okay, finally, let's turn towards society. Issues of division, free speech. First, the arrest of Tyler Robinson. This was for the murder of the conservative activist Charlie Kirk after a big manhunt.
Yes, a 33-hour manhunt. Police apparently received over 11,000 tips, according to the official state briefing reported via PBS, an A2 source.
And while it's, as you say, an isolated criminal case, the reaction seems to have really highlighted some deep divisions.
It really has. You saw vigils being held for Charlie Kirk, not just locally, but in places like Sydney and London. It shows how these ideological divides resonate globally now, and how events like this can galvanize activism on different sides.
And the social media fallout, that seemed particularly intense. There was a Florida teacher suspended.
Right, suspended for reportedly posting on Facebook that Kirk's death was, quote, a close second to an obituary they were hoping for. Extremely inflammatory.
Wow.
And then you had Florida Governor Ron DeSantis publicly praising his education commissioner for addressing teachers who were apparently celebrating the murder online.
So what does this tell us, beyond the specifics of this awful case?
It's a stark illustration, isn't it, of just how polarized things are. These ongoing culture wars, especially around free speech, what's acceptable public discourse, professional conduct. Jacksonville Today and other B2, B3 sources tracking public sentiment really highlighted this. It shows how quickly tragedy gets sucked into these wider political battles, deepening the divides.
And related to free speech, but in a different context, concerns raised at UC Berkeley.
Yes, this involved the university apparently providing names of faculty and students, 160 of them, to the Trump administration. This was part of an investigation into alleged anti-Semitism.
She secretly provided the names.
That's what the reporting suggests from Reuters, a B2 source. And it sparked real concern from rights advocates. Their argument is that criticism of Israeli government policy is potentially being conflated with anti-Semitism here.
What's the university's position?
They stated they were essentially fulfilling legal obligations. Apparently, there were threats of federal funding cuts. They didn't cooperate. But the counter-argument is about due process, whether it was followed properly. It raises big questions about academic freedom, government oversight on campus, and where those lines are drawn.
And one more related item on social tensions. Australia released a report on Islamophobia.
Yes, the National Response to Islamophobia report. It detailed a really sharp rise, a 150% increase in verified in-person Islamophobic incidents since October 2023.
And that's linked to the Israel-Hamas conflict.
The report directly links the surge to the conflict's fallout. This is from an official government transcript, A1 reliability. It's prompted the Australian government to now consider, I think, 54 different measures aimed at tackling this kind of discrimination.
So another example of geopolitical events having very direct, very concerning social impacts far away.
Exactly. It underscores this global challenge.
Yeah.
Rising social tensions, hate incidents based on religion or perceived affiliation.
Yeah.
And governments feeling the pressure to respond proactively.
That concludes the Friday, September 12th, 2025 Intelligence Brief, brought to you on this Saturday, September 13th edition of The Deep Dive. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Spotify and share your thoughts by liking, commenting, or spreading the word. Stay informed, stay sharp, and may your Saturday be as calm as a closed trading floor.
Maybe just one final thought for you, our listener, to take into the weekend. Given all these rising systemic risks we've touched on today, the geopolitical flashpoints, the economic protectionism, those deepening social divides, the humanitarian crises. How might these interconnected forces shape not just what happens next on the world stage, but maybe your own understanding of the world around you? What really stands out to you from today's brief as the most critical takeaway? How does it frame your perspective moving forward, something to maybe mull over?
A great question to leave us with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive and for sharing your sources with us. We truly appreciate you making the time to stay informed. Until next time.